Hello, I'm Amir Fasihi, founder and team builder at Amnion Life. Amnion Life is a medical device company specifically intended to develop novel medical devices to decrease mortality and complications in preterm infants. Amnion Life as a company was born about 6 years ago when I had a trip to Europe, and there was a family member, a cousin of ours, who had a baby that was born very preterm, and she had an extended NICU stay with complications. And when we saw the little girl, she was about 3-4 years old, and she had developed ocular and neurodevelopmental injury as a result of her NICU stay, requiring daily both financial costs and an emotional cost for the family. About 3-4 weeks later, on the same trip, I had a strange dream that really started this whole project and this whole company from it. So what is the problem? First of all, premature birth is very, very common problem. Per March of Dimes, it's the #1 cause of death of babies in the United States and one of the leading causes of mortality and morbidity globally. About 15 million infants are born every year. About 1 out of 10 infants are born preterm. In the past 25 years, there's been a 35% increase in the rate of preterm births, and now a baby is born preemie every minute. And many who survive the NICU stay, they do develop organ injuries during developmental and other developmental setbacks that creates a lifetime of financial and emotional costs. Now, why is that? What happens in the NICU that it is a problem? So infants or human beings, when we're in pregnancy, we're in the amniotic sac. The amniotic sac provides a comfortable temperature-regulated environment. The temperature is always at 37 degrees Celsius, and the infant, because of the metabolism, is at 37.5 degrees, so a little bit runs higher than the outside. Now, the protections for the outside air, such as the heat loss protections that the body has, they develop in the last few weeks of pregnancy, especially the last month. So when the infant is born, before then, they don't have some of the mechanisms, such as shivering mechanism. Shivering mechanism is a mechanism that generates heat when we lose heat to the environment. The preterm infants don't have that. In the last month of pregnancy, there's development there's saturated or subcutaneous fat being insulated underneath the skin to prevent us from having heat loss. The preterm infants, they have very little subcutaneous fat because it's not needed at that. The term infants also have brown fat, which is used to generate heat. Preterm infants, again, they don't have that. And in addition, their surface area to volume ratio is 3 times terms and 6 times adults. So we can imagine when we get cold, we decrease our surface area to decrease the heat loss. And you have 6 times the adults and 3 times the infants with the blood vessels very close to the skin. So as soon as they're born, there's this tremendous heat loss. And despite the best efforts in the NICU, which is drying them up really quickly, they put them into a plastic bag in order to decrease environmental water loss and evaporative water loss, and they put them under radiant warmers. But despite the best efforts, the infants experience hypothermia within 5 minutes to 30 minutes or even an hour at very high rates. So about up to 50% of infants, about 1,500 grams, up to 78% of them when they're at 750 grams, and at 2.5 kilos, anywhere from 20% or so. And after that, it drops to less than 2%. And you can imagine an episode of hypothermia when the core temperature drops a centigrade. For any of us, it's a shock to the system. And it happens when the most critical time in development, there is a stress reaction, there is an increase in metabolism in order to generate heat, using the calories that's needed for growth in order to increase heat loss. And that increase in metabolism is causing increase in oxygen need, causing hypoglycemia and all kinds of negative outcomes that happen because of this new environment that the infant is now at. So what is our solution? Our solution is a patent-protected proprietary device that creates a controlled bath environment for the infant with synthetic amniotic fluid that's developed by the device itself. The fluid in the bath is a has the same osmolality, temperature as the maternal amniotic fluid. It's this crystalloid solution with all the minerals and the electrolytes that is in the amniotic solution that recreates what's called the intramembranous pathway of water absorption, where the infant in the womb is absorbing water from the amniotic fluid. That's recreated, which in the current system, when they're exposed to air, they're actually started losing water, a tremendous amount of water. And we're going to replace them. The IV fluid that's used to administer fluid to these infants is causing chronic lung disease and all kinds of other. So our device, mainly we hope to decrease environmental heat loss, decrease episodes of hypothermia, decrease environmental water loss as a result of it. The infant, it sits on a sterile cover that serves as a harness that with the head always kept outside the fluid lines at all times. All the monitoring accessories are going to be on the scalp, and the central lines are going to be safely made above the fluid line, so the line itself never comes into contact with the fluid. The infant and the umbilical cord is only within the fluid line. And the benefits, we believe, environmental heat loss, which means that they're now using calories more for growth. They can increase the rate of growth in the NICU, having shorter length of stay in the NICU, decreasing episodes of hypothermia, having all these decreasing all the negative outcomes. Then the water loss and the skin issue is a big issue for these infants. They have skin drying and then scaling, and then the skin gets infected, leading to sepsis, death. And then eliminate prolonged bed rest. Some of these infants are so weak, the muscles, they can't even lift it. So when in the fluid environment, we think it's going to have a much more comfortable environment for the infant to be moving around the extremities. We've come a long way since the dream I told you, that was in 2003. We've had 2 seed rounds that we've completed. We've built a clean room facility. Our prototype has been built. Our team is I had to create a very lean environment and lean company for a very complex device. So we have our US-based team that are the more executive level, the regulatory team, our business development team, and then our lead engineering and engineering. I built a facility in Serbia because we needed to have a much more cost-effective way to do this complex build this machine. So we put a very dedicated, great team in a town called Požega in Serbia. I have family members that are Serbian, and I had the connections. And I have great engineers that are been in the automotive industry and even the military industry. One of them has 30 years of doing CADs and military now is doing medical devices for us. The target market, there are about 100,000 infants that are very preterm or extreme preterm. These are the initial ones that absolutely need this device, because each one of them, the average cost is about $51,000 for those infants. A 3-day reduction in short and length of stay can save about $10,000 to $25,000 per infant. And then the long-term cost, the market for these infants, the NICU market is $26 billion that we spend just on direct costs. And that's not including the indirect cost of after they're released from the NICU, the readmissions and the developmental social skill needs that they need. So that's $26 billion is just the cost of them in the NICU, which it should be much better, much more efficient. We should do, as doctors, we should do better, in my opinion. Our go-to market is the top 25 hospitals in the U.S., serving about 1,400 beds, and then about in the rest of the world as well. We are patent protected right now in the U.S., and we're patent pending we have 2 patents in the U.S., patent pending in Europe, in China, in Japan, India, and Australia. And we just submitted a 2nd patent for artificial placenta. And together with AmnioBed, we're creating the artificial womb, so that when the infant comes out, instead of getting the ET tube and all that, we just connect the umbilical cord to an oxygenation nutrition machine, and then they're in the AmnioBed and the environment itself. And it's we believe it's going to be a much more healthy and much more natural environment for them to continue their development until they're ready to be discharged. The current technology was actually invented in 19th century by Stéphane Tarnier. It's a mattress with a heating element, closed environment, and humidity. It's got better, bells and whistles, but really hasn't changed except being computerized. the top four manufacturers, GE, Drager, Atom Medical, and Natus, they dominate the market, and they are our potential acquisition partners as well. The business model is based on capital equipment sales. Each unit is going to cost approximately $80,000. We're going to have also a lease model for that. And also there are the daily consumables, the harness that the infant sits on, the cartridge where the synthetic amniotic fluid is, the filters, the cleaning products. All that we're about $200 a day, about $55,000 per unit, and basically the projections are based on the revenue of the consumables and the unit sales. You can see as the number of active units gets increased, that the consumable revenue significantly increases. This is about capturing about 10% of the market, about 1,400 total U.S. Beds, which are out of about, I think about 27,000 beds right now. Right now we're prototyping and doing the engineering, much of the engineering. We have the preclinical testing that's upcoming, the biocompatibility testing, the electrical software validation in 2020. And then the clinical trials, initially it's going to be on first hour, the golden hour, trying to see if we can decrease hypothermia within that 1 hour and decrease episodes of decrease environmental heat loss and water loss in just that 1 hour. After that, we're going to do safety testing for longer, 6 hours, 24 hours, 72 hours, and we're making the device up to 24 days, designing it for 28 days of safety. We are currently raising $2.5 million. It's a bridge round. We're doing it via redcrow.com, which is a crowdfunding site. It's a Reg D offering for accredited investors with a minimum investment of $5,000. And this is basically 2.5 is going to take us through preclinical trials and clinical trials and to the FDA application. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Questions? Yes, sir.
Where does the synthetic amniotic fluid come from?
So the synthetic amniotic fluid, the device gets hooked up to the hospital water supply, like a dialysis machine. We have 6 medical grade filters in the machine that purifies the water of all the constituents that were in the hospital water, makes it purified water. Then there's a second cartridge with a dosing pump that pumps in a concentrate amniotic fluid, which is just electrolytes and minerals, sodium, all the basics, and mixes it they're warmed up in the device, mixes it at a rate to create the final osmolality. And the osmolality we're putting it at 240, 260, 280 range. It actually can change because it changes in pregnancy from the 23rd week to late pregnancy in that range.
One more question there.
Have you thought about trying to capture the mother's own amniotic fluid and using that in addition to the synthetic fluid?
We haven't really thought about it because it's a very complicated. That would be very complicated. In the maternal amniotic fluid, there are about 800 compounds, other than the electrolytes and minerals. But most of these compounds are sloughed off skin cells, from the urinary tract, from the lungs. There are a few compounds that are necessary, but those later on can be separated and administered into the fluid. Also, we're designing a third pump for administration of pharmaceuticals into the fluid, because in these infants, when you administer fluid on this, when they administer pharmaceuticals onto the fluid, it's absorbed into the serum as quickly as almost injected into the blood. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
You guys had a pre-submission meeting with the FDA, and then what do you think your regulatory path will be? Will it be a
Good.
combination device or a PMA?
Good question. So the question is, have we had the pre-sub and what's the regulatory update? So the device, there are no predicate devices on the market. So this is a de novo product, and it's a very classical de novo product. We have 2 regulatory experts, one Danny Chadra and Michael Drews. Michael Drews is one of the leading world, U.S. experts that specifically works on de novo products. Once we go through the de novo product, basically what we're going to have to show the FDA and the CE mark is that we're going to have to show that this is as safe as a regular incubator. If a regular incubator fails, you know, we have the same safety mechanism. If it fails, you know, that infant's at risk. If it fails in us, as far as temperature, etc. If we can show the safety that it's as safe as a regular, then it will be a class 2 device ultimately, and we don't have to go through the PMA route. And we're hoping that through the de novo will prove to be a class 2 safe device that the PMA won't be necessary.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.